Yes, I can take it next. Okay, to
Okay,
Shoko.
please.
I can take it next. Okay, fine.
Oh, Prof
I have
Shoko,
yeah. Okay, can I make
Please.
let me share my screen. I want to quickly share my
Yes,
screen.
please. Yeah,
Okay, fine.
the technical people are there for you.
Okay,
Professor
I sent a
Shoko.
document. I sent a document. Is maybe the technical people have my document already,
Yeah,
which I
okay.
can speak
Yeah.
to. The document is people have my document already.
Okay.
Which I can speak to. Is it okay? Okay.
No, you can. Okay, whilst they are working on the document, you can go on and let us have what is in the document, because it's already you. You just want to share with us.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to do it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay. Yes. The title. I can proceed. Why is they are connecting? Is that so?
yes, please do. Please do.
Okay. The title of my paper is called Decolonizing Terminologies. Sorry, in the first place, my name is Professor Tabona Shoko from the University of Zimbabwe, where I teach African traditional religion as a subject. The title of my topic
I
is
know you are
Decolonizing Terminologies.
Professor Shoko,
Yeah.
I know you are going to have a lot to say, because you are the Zimbabweans whose this road somebody stole all the artifacts. So please go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes,
thank you. So the title of my paper is Decolonizing Terminologies, Colonial Language, Doctrinal Distortion, and the Restoration of Shona Traditional Religion. So I'm going to use Shona as my point of illustration.
Okay, yeah.
So in this presentation, I do analyze how colonial terminologies have distorted the Shona traditional religion, and proposes, and in the end I propose restoring emic language to the doctrines. So what we notice is that the colonial terms have forced the Shona religion into Christian or Eurocentric frames through these distortions. No, the doctrines have been distorted, and therefore the colonialists delegitimized the Shona or indigenous rituals. So the paper proposes decolonization by restoring the Shona terms, meanings as well as rituals. The aim of this paper is to actually ensure epistemic accuracy and religious self-determination, not necessarily nostalgia. So in this paper, I also start with the research problem. What we want to situate as a research problem is that the colonial encounters did not only impose political rule, what they did was to impose a language regime. So terms like ancestor worship, witch doctor, terms like spirit possession, and fetishism are misleading, but they entered the academic and public discourse as default descriptions of African religions. So what we can simply notice is that the terms such as ancestor worship have pointed out to praying to a god with a small g. The terms like witch doctor have also portrayed a healer or traditional healer as a witch or wizard. Terms like spirit possession have been coined, signifying or pointing towards demonic practices, and fetishism are actually referred to as charms of evil. So such terms are not neutral. They actually conform to the discourse of primitivity. They are dangerous and irrational, and created influence complex among the local people, and naturally created epistemic violence. So the conceptual framework that I utilize for my paper is actually taken from Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and right, I think is a very popular poet and author, Sabelo Jane Love Gacheni. All these are scholars projecting the frame of decoloniality. So they draw on three lenses. And what are these three lenses? First, the language. The earlier speaker has spoken about the issue of language. That's the language shaped thought. Second one is that colonization happened in the mind too, not necessarily outside.
No, no, no.
And,
Okay.
and the third point is that to truly understand, let's listen to the people who practice it. So, in this particular context, we also want to move forward and share the methodology which I've used for the paper. I've utilized all the books from 1890 to 1965, projecting how missionaries translated Shona words. Also conducted interviews among elders, talking to spirit mediums, traditional leaders such as grandmothers in some areas of Zimbabwe, and also compared stories, old folk tales, poems. That project, we were post-colonial texts and so forth. See, and so we were able to extract how meaning shifted. I've also been able to observe and participate in ceremonies such as rain-making ceremonies now and also before that, and noted how the words have changed. But as we proceed, colleagues, let's understand the Shona religious worldview. Okay, yeah. In short, the Shona comprises they have a belief system which is centered around the concept of Mari, a god, which is well, the creator of humanity. Of course, there are so many other praise names. I won't go into those. But then there's also the phenomenon of of course, there are debates. Sorry, before that, there are debates surrounding this concept of Mari, Shona God. Yes, some scholars argue that the term was brought by missionaries when they translated the Bible because the same term exists in the Bible. But however, research has confirmed that the Shona term Mari is indigenous, extracted from archaeology by even some scholars like Terence Ranger and others. And local people do confirm that the Shona Mari existed prior to missionary or the biblical times. There are other spirits like ancestors who are departed relatives, alien spirits, or spirits which are not necessarily related to the members of the living. These are called Shavi spirits. You also have mermaids and then spirits of revenge. And you also have practitioners, of course, human beings such as chiefs, healers, spirit mediums, midwives, and their whole a host of beliefs and practices, including but not limited to rituals, taboos, totems, omens. Sacred places do exist, mountains, rivers, as well as objects, and the concept or the phenomenon of the land is very critical. Witchcraft and sorcery issues also prevail. Overall, what we are projecting is a functional religious system, which the Shona people believe in, even prior to colonization. But let's move on to understand how the colonial worlds changed the religion and misconstrued some of the terms. The Shona people use a word called bira. Bira, this one is a ritual term which is used for beer drinks, especially in terms of ancestral veneration. The colonial term is associated with them is that it is hidden ritual. That beer drink is hidden ritual, and they will see the misrepresentation. It only appears in terms of beer drinking and dancing. So the correct term that must be applied is that bira is a formal ceremony commune with the Vadzimu or the ancestors. It resolves disputes, cleanses evil, and also restores harmony. Let's look at another term and see how it has been misconstrued. Right, the term Vadzimu referring to ancestors. This Vadzimu has been taken by the colonialists to refer to ghosts, to demons, and the phenomenon of ancestor worship has been coined. So the colonial setup is that projects hidden ghosts and then family gods, but that one is a misrepresentation. Phenomenon reduced to fear of the dead, relatives, and spirit possession and spirit rituals. So the correct usage of the term is that Wazimu are family ancestral guardians who protect and guide descendants. They also intercede with Mwari, the God or Supreme God, and to uphold moral order and unity. Right. Another misconstrued term that we can also share is the term Mwari itself. Yes, this one has been coined by the missionaries as a tribal god, as the rain god, or an ancestral spirit. So the colonial terms projected native, what we call native deity, a high god, a hidden god, or a rain spirit. That is clearly, we mark it as a misrepresentation. That representation was aimed at reducing the phenomenon of God to rain-making ceremonies and fear based on worship at a shrine called Matunjeni. The correct use of the term, therefore, is that Mari is the supreme creator, not necessarily an ancestor. That one, the supreme God is transcendent source of justice and life, and is actually worshipped at the national oracle at Matopo or Matujeni. Another term that we can also look or consider is called Nganga. The Nganga is a traditional healer. The term has been misconstrued to refer to witch doctor or sorcerer. So the colonialists really coined that term witch doctor, referring to what they called native medicine men. That is clearly its representation. They reduced to the practitioner was reduced to spells, superstition, and anti-Christian magic. So the correct term is Nganga, refers to a traditional healer and diviner healer or diviner. They perform several functions. Actually, one prominent scholar, the late Gordon Chavunduka, wanted or preferred to use the term sacred practitioner. This is a trained specialist in herbal medicine, spiritual diagnosis, and conflict resolution. They heal via the use of dyes called akata, herbs, and the rituals. What is therefore the logic of this order which we are explaining here? There is some logic, there's some sense in terms of trying to correct the kind of hemorrhage which occurred on the Shona terminology. The Bira, if we use the Bira or the order in which I have presented these words, the Bira starts, of course, is the ritual practice, something which is tangible among the Shona people. Then we explain to Adzimu. This one answers who is the Bira ritual for. So that Bira ritual is for ancestor veneration, not ancestor worship. We also analyze the term Mari. Who do Wadzimu intercede with? None other than the creator, not a high god. And finally, we also spoke about the term Nganga. Who diagnoses when the chain Mari Wadzimu living is broken? Thus, the Shona people call this person Chiremba or healer, not a witch doctor. My presentation continues. Sorry. Next, what we want to understand from this presentation is the impact of the use and misuse of these terms. The colonial rulers forced the Shona ideas into English boxes. These weren't just translations, they were judgments. The terms, we argue, they carried legal, moral, and ontological judgments, which doctor, as we have already explained, made the Nganga therefore arrestable, and ancestor worship made Wadzimu incompatible with the concept of monotheism. And how do these teachings go twisted? Who actually is on the top if we were to establish the Shona structure or hierarchy among themselves? We discover that Mari really is the supreme spirit. Then Wadzimu, that's the ancestors, and people follow. So there's a connection. But the Christianity misconstrued and they tiptoed the Shona cosmological structure. They established that God is important, number one, and followed by the angels, Michael, Gabriel, and the like, and then you have the people. So the Wadzimu, the ancestors, which we center our religion today, looked less important, and therefore they pushed out. So the translation wasn't neutral. It was used to replace Ubuntu with colonial law, church, and medicine, which the missionaries, colonialists, and so forth spent all their lifetime establishing those institutions. So using Bira, Wadzimu, or Mari, Nganga, it restores the way we have explained, restores the original legal, political, and philosophical weight. So my presentation is ticking, it's ticking at some point, but now I get it. Thank you. So what are we arguing now? And having now the twisting of this terminology, what happened in real life? You discover that the colonialists moved a step further. The laws banned it. That's point number one. Like in Zimbabwe, Witchcraft Suppression Act made the Nganga illegal. Number two, schools shamed it. Kids were taught Shona religion was backward. Next step, people felt ashamed. Some of them would actually profess in the open, we don't worship ancestors, even though that's not what Mzimu means. So we ended up with mixed up versions. Some churches have healers, we call them prophets. So that led to changes in the original meaning. What happens next now? Let's move towards restoration, a decolonial lexical method. So what we are arguing for in this paper is to use the real names. For example, Wadzimu, colonial ancestor. No, that's colonial. The colonial will term them ancestor spirits, but the indigenous will call them guardians of lineage, morality, and the land. The Nganga, the colonialists would call this witch doctor, but the indigenous people call this person specialist, meaning a herbalist, a diviner, counselor, and mediator with the spirit world. So we fight now endeavor to explain religion in Shona first. Let's start with karma, the meaning relationship, a relational, not Christian concepts of sin and salvation. Towards restoration, what we lobby for is to change the laws, to update Zimbabwe's laws to recognize that concept of Nganga, for example, and spirit mediums with respect. Teach it right in schools. That's the second point. Chivanu meaning the personality or uhunu or ubuntu phenomenon. Chivanu classes use Shona stories. We argue that they also must use words first, English second. So the Shona people are also expected to do ceremonies publicly, to hold the Bira rituals Mukwera openly with correct names so that the youth can also learn. And what are the anticipated contributions, therefore, to religious studies? We expect that this kind of approach provides a model of how terminology shapes doctrine beyond Africa. Secondly, to the Shona communities, what does this, therefore, mean? The model produces a glossary of restored terms for use in schools, law, and liturgy. And to decolonial theory, what does this imply? The model moves from critique to applied linguistic restoration. By way of conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I want to point out that colonial terminologies were not neutral labels. They were theological verdicts. Decolonizing Shona traditional religion requires lexical sovereignty, the right to name the sacred in one's own language. Restoration, therefore, is not return, but it's recentering, letting Wadzimu be Wadzimu, those are the ancestors, and let Mwari, the God, be Mwari, on terms set by Shivanu itself. I thank you, Chairman. I'm done.
Wow. That is fantastic. That's very great. Thank you very much, Shona. You really, that was, and now what, let me just summarize it's just big that we come to terms with the realities that lexical sovereignty has to be involved when we want to change this this thing we are talking about. So thank you very much, Professor Shona. And like I said at the beginning, when you are beginning, I think you are in a good position to talk about this colonization thing, because all your countries, this thing we learned were stolen. So thank you very much for this. So it affected you directly. So we know
Exactly.
You're in a position to now say what it's all about, how we are going to handle it. So thank you very much. So thank you very much.
Thank you.